of the Massachusetts Public Library for offering me this opportunity to speak. And I am here to speak to celebrate and honor and acknowledge Women's History Month. And I am a local New York City teacher from Brooklyn. I've been teaching for 17 years, and I love social studies. I love talking about unsung heroes and unsung women. And today I'm going to discuss unsung women in American history. If you have any comments, opinions, connections, if you have any sort of opinions or connections, just let me know. Evidently I can't hear you, but if you type it in, if you type something into the chat, Mr. Gundel will let me know what you think, because once I hit the share button, once I show my PowerPoint presentation, I won't be able to read your comments. So just let me know. And I certainly want to say thank you once again, thank you for everyone who's here tonight. And please, I'd love to hear your comments. I'd love to hear your opinions, your connections. Just keep in mind, you want to be respectful. You want to be careful when you're sharing. You want to be mindful that you're in an environment on the computer where a lot of people are listening. And when you share, please share things that you think that would be considerate and would be a positive addition to any discussion that you would like to hear. I'm going to hit share now, so you're going to I'm going to say you won't see me anymore, but don't worry, you'll hear me, hopefully. Working on it. Lee, you're looking at unsung women in American history?
Yep, I can see it loud and clear.
Very good. This is this presentation's on unsung heroes in American history. And typically I refer to people whose unsung heroes are people whose contributions have typically been overlooked in history. You could be ignored by history, by society, for any number of reasons, because of your race, your religion, your gender, or simply put, just lost to time. Sometimes there are significant people in American history that make contributions that are briefly acknowledged, and sometimes they get lost. And these three unsung heroes we're going to learn about tonight are people who have been unsung, who are not too many people know about them. Two of them have their foundation in the trenches of World War I, the RADIUM girls and Anna Coleman Ladd. And the third one is a Long Island suffragette, Rosalie Garner Jones. And as we go through them, if you have any questions, let me know, and away we go. Well, the first two unsung heroes have their foundation in the trenches of World War I. This is an image of trenches of World War I. You'll notice that these soldiers are deep in the trenches, and these tall men are safe. They're safe because they're inside these trenches. They were dug out temporarily just to fight in World War I. Hundreds of miles along the border of France and Germany were these soldiers fighting. But these trenches were terrible places. At the start of World War I, once they started fighting, soldiers got sick. Living in these trenches, it was dark. It was rat infested. Supplies were always low, and the smells simply of dead bodies littered the grounds of these trenches. Typically, you can't get out of the trenches, because if you get out, you wind up one of another casualty. You'll notice this foot in the top left-hand corner. This is something, this is a foot that's been rotted out. It's called trench foot. Typically, soldiers in World War I came down with a disease called trench foot because their feet would be in water for so long. Here's a couple of soldiers with knee deep in water, and you can't keep your feet in water for months end, or your feet start to rot out. And the reason why I'm telling you about these trenches is they are dark and dirty places. And that really brings us to our first, a connection to our first unsung hero, which were the Radium Girls. The Radium Girls painted and produced radium painted watch dials. I've collected 3 images of 3 World War I soldiers. And you'll notice I put a big circle around all their arms. They're all wearing radium painted watch dials. And it was a good source of light. Any source of small light would be positive. Certainly in a battle of a matter of inches in World War II in the trenches, World War I in the trenches. So it wasn't looked upon as a danger. It was actually looked upon as very positive. People didn't know about the danger of radium. Here is a couple of advertisements from the early 1900s about radium. There was radium water being advertised by the Seattle's most prominent musicians, all revigorate with radium water. Here is radium toothpaste. Sorry about that. And if you look really closely, this radium toothpaste, it's actually was produced by Dr. Alfred Curie, which is interesting. He was the husband of Marie Curie, who invented radium. So radium was well accepted. It was in cigarettes, gum, matches, cards, playing cards, cigarettes. It was even a beauty cream. It would make you look younger. It was a miracle drug, until it wasn't. The U.S. Radium Corps produced the radium painted watches in World War I in New Jersey, in Orange, New Jersey. Typically, this is what the environment looked like for the Radium Girls. They hired women between the ages of 15 and 22. They were selected because they had small hands and could paint small surfaces. And each desk for each Radium Girl was self-sufficient. They would take their paint, and they were taught to lip, dip, and paint. You tape the paintbrush, go to your mouth, make the tip sharp, and you go to the radium, which is right here. You see that little cup of radium on the right. That actually is radium, and it goes straight onto the number. So you would lip, dip, and paint over and over for each number. And in one day, a worker could lip, dip, and paint hundreds of times. Usually these young women were women of immigrants, typically paid $18 a week, which back then was a lot of money. To put into perspective, Henry Ford's $5 a day was considered transformative. So $18 a week for these young immigrant girls was fantastic, and it really it served as a great attraction for all the girls to come and work. And as World War I continued, the stalemate ended, but the Radium Corps didn't end. The Radium Corps continued producing their watches because after World War I, it wasn't about the war anymore. It wasn't about the soldiers. It was fashionable. It was fashionable, so much so that the Radium Corps opened up a second factory in Illinois. and employed thousands of radium workers. And here's our first unsung hero. This is Grace Fryer. Yes, it's the same lady. This is Grace Fryer as a young woman. This is Grace Fryer before she died. You'll notice her jaw has disintegrated, and after World War I, many of the radium workers, their teeth started falling out. They had sores in their mouth. They had terrible breath. They had tumors. They had pains all over their body, and they were disintegrating, and no one really understood why. It was a mystery. But Grace Fryer figured it out. In 1922, the first worker passed away from radium poisoning. And Grace Fryer noticed the pattern that the workers who worked for U.S. Radium Corps many years later were all coming down with the same sort of symptoms: the bad breath, the losing of teeth, the falling apart, and the pain. So Grace Fryer, she tried to take action, but everywhere she went, she was stopped. She tried to get help. She tried to attain a lawyer, and everywhere she went, she ran into doctors and lawyers and people who were either intimidated, bribed, or people that just didn't want to help her. It took Grace Fryer 5 years to get a lawyer. She gathered 5 other Radium Girl workers, and she finally was able to sue in 1927 for $250,000. When she did get to court, all of a sudden the Radium Court really slowed things down. They needed time to organize. People were on vacation. They needed to organize for the trial. But you might be thinking, why would they want to slow things down? It was because the 5 girls who were suing were in such poor shape, and their health was so bad that there was no way that they could actually survive through a trial, and they were right. Grace Fryer, she was forced. She had to settle because she would not have made it through. They received $10,000 a worker. And here's a rare interview with 3 girls. It's 6 minutes, but it reveals a lot about the radium workers, and we'll talk about it after. But let me play for you first.
I worked in the biggest room because there was over 100 girls worked in there. And that's how you was taught every day. We never got time to talk. You were too busy to work. But you wanted to do it good because you knew that you wouldn't pass. They let you do it about 6 weeks. And if you wasn't any good, you were dismissed. And the bosses worked downstairs a lot of time. So we just figured, well, we got a little radium left in our jars. They're going to be well cleaned out. We got to get new for starting after lunch, so we take a sneak. So we start plowing around, go in the dark room. Paint our faces up and put mustaches, and a couple of girls painted their ears, and I always did paint, by my nostrils here, and done my eyebrows, and done a mustache and a chin. And And one time we had one girl that even painted her teeth. And held her mouth open till it dried on there. See, it dried. Then the three of us, we went in the dark room to make faces at each other, see. And then you don't see nothing, nobody. All you see is the radium. So all you're looking at is eyebrows and mustaches and your teeth.
How much did you have each week?
Well, when I first started, I was getting $17.50 a week. And when I left the dime store, I was only making $5.
So it was a lot of money. And was it
Don't you think it was? That's what I like more about than the work, the money. Because I could buy what I want. And I always thought, God, I was blessed with this anyway, so keep at it. But at that time, I enjoyed myself and my life. I always had a lot of good friends. We all got along good together. I enjoyed going out with them. We'd go over town and eat. Once in a while, buy what we wanted. Go to the park. I would say Margaret was my closest friend. And she went with when I was going with the boyfriend, they were cousins. We both went. She went with one and I went with the other one. And she was my best friend. And she was a good worker too. And then before I knew it, she got sick and had the broken jawbone. It never healed. In 2 years, she was dead.
Peg's trouble started when she had a tooth pulled and it wouldn't heal. It was all honeycombed from the radium. The tooth never did heal.
This is my sister. How she looked at 17 before she went to work at the radium dial. And she looked at the picture of herself.
She's such a pretty girl.
Red
Pretty red
hair.
This is a picture of her, how she looked just a couple weeks before she passed away with her boyfriend, Chuck, with some of the smaller children. When she'd come home after work, she would have to lay down and rest. I can see her walking down the street. She limped. It all seemed to settle in her hip. Of course, it was all through her bones. This is Peg and Chuck. They would have been married the following June, but she passed away in August, before the month of June.
He was a wonderful fella,
Chuck.
right up until the very end.
Chuck felt awful bad about it.
And Chuck used to put Peg in the little wagon when she got so bad and pulled her up to where we used to have the picnic. She couldn't walk, so he just put her in the wagon, away we went. And when it must have been about a year that she was so really, bad.
My parents took her to a doctor in Chicago. He confirmed what they had thought it was. But he says, I cannot speak out and tell you because this would be the end of my career. So there was really nothing they could do.
He went to a lawyer, but evidently the lawyer was bought off. Couldn't do nothing for her, so Daddy said, well, just forget it. He said, we won't go any further.
Well, this really this reveals a lot and confirms a lot. One, it reveals that the women played with the products. The women didn't understand how dangerous it was, and two, it also confirms how painful and what terrible pain the fact that the girls went through. I could tell you at the conclusion of the trial, after they settled, the U.S. Radium Corps official, true to form to the end, as the representative walked out of the building, they came out with a statement saying that we unfortunately gave work to a great many people who were physically unfit to procure employment on their hands, cripples and persons similarly incapacitated were engaged. What is then considered as an act of kindness on our part has turned against us. So the U.S. RADIUM Corps is really, they were calling the women who worked for them cripples, and they were the victim, not the workers. And I think Grace Fryer calling them out on this. Nowadays, products are manufacturers, they have standards. Nowadays, businesses are responsible for the health of their workers. And Grace Frier's courage to fight them really changed the laws and made our society better. I'm going to stay with the trenches, and I'm going to try to introduce a second unsung hero to you. World War I, what you're looking at right now is an image of technology that was transformative during World War I. Let's see, all of a sudden there were planes, no more horses, there were tanks, there was flamethrowers from World War I that all made the trenches terrible places. But what also made the trenches terrible places were machine guns, rapid fire machine guns. You notice here these gentlemen the gentlemen on the left actually are sitting on the cusp of a trench firing machine guns. And these machine guns were responsible for catastrophic facial injuries. And when you think about it, it sort of makes sense, because if you're standing in a trench, the great majority of your body is safe. The only part of your body that is at most jeopardy is when you put your face above, when you pop your head above and look above. That's the part of your body that is most at jeopardy. And that brings us to our next unsung hero, who is Anna Coleman Ladd. Anna Coleman Ladd was an American sculptor and artist who helped World War I soldiers with catastrophic facial injuries. She was in England during the time of World War I, 1914. Her husband was a Red Cross doctor, so she saw the outbreak of the war, and she saw the casualties. I got to warn you, some of the faces you're about to see are a little hard to look at. But these are Anna Coleman Ladd's, these are her clients. For now, I'd like you to just look at the left. The faces on the left is how Anna Coleman Ladd received them after all medical treatment was done. On the left is after everything can be done for them by doctors. And you notice now focus on the right as I go backwards. Look at the same pictures. You'll notice that the faces are better. They're improved. They're more acceptable. These soldiers with these horrifying injuries, they were shunned by society. They were grotesque. They were shamed. Their sense of self-worth was very low. While Anna Coleman Ladd was in England, a series of blue benches were set up in England, and they were set up for the public. These blue benches were made to signify to the people not to look, because a World War I soldier might sit there, and if you sit there or look over there, you might see these gentlemen. Well, Anna Coleman Ladd saw the men, and she she put her skills to work. She lobbied the American Red Cross and volunteered her services to help these soldiers. And at her request, she opened up the American Red Cross studio of portrait masks in France. And this is inside her portrait studio, and you can see all the masks on her wall. In order to help these people, Anna Coleman Ladd took casts of their faces. You'll notice all the different casts of the different soldiers, and they were different injuries because different soldiers lost different parts of their bodies. Sometimes it was just the side of their face. Sometimes it was just a cheek or an ear. Sometimes it was just a nose. These are all the prosthetics that she created. You notice there are a lot of glasses here. It's because she used the glasses to attach to the casts to hold the prosthetics up to their faces to make sure that it stayed on. Once she took the casts, she made the prosthetics. She gave them hair, real hair, and she painted it. She painted the masks to be the same color as the soldier's face. I'll show you a quick video. This one's not as long, but this is Anna Coleman Ladd, and you could see her help these gentlemen. I could tell you, Anna Coleman Ladd, she made the soldiers feel at home. She treated them respect. She treated them with humanity, and she gave them their lives back. And that's something invaluable that you rarely can give to people. It's written that it would take her 1 month to produce one mask, and I can tell you, Anna Coleman Ladd in her studio created 185 masks, which is a tremendous feat in all itself. And she was given an award from the French Foreign Legion. She's clearly humanitarian, but there are no examples of her work to be seen anywhere. There's no examples because the men historically loved their masks, and the men were buried with their masks. So you You don't see them anywhere. Right, I'm not going to talk about the trenches anymore, I promise. Because the first two unsung heroes really got their foundation out of the trenches. The last unsung hero is about someone who is a suffragette from Long Island. And this suffragette is known for going on long voyages, long pilgrimages, and have typically people who go on long voyages make historic changes. Carrie Nation, bottom left-hand corner, she traveled around America within 2 years. Prohibition, the Pilgrims cross the Atlantic Ocean, make historic changes. The Freedom Riders come all the way down south during the Civil Rights era to fight segregation. It works. Martin Luther King goes on, walked all over America to fight segregation, and it works. This is Mother Jones. She walked to fight child labor, and it worked. In saying this, it's a good introduction to Rosalie Gardiner Jones, who also walked and also succeeded. Gardiner Jones is an interesting story because, one, I particularly like it because, well, she was from Long Island, which I think is awesome. But suffrage is a particular interest of mine, and I like to talk about. I like to talk about it and discuss it. I can tell you, in the early 1900s, women didn't have the right to vote. They were considered too emotional, too feeble-minded, or government just wasn't a place for them. And she came from an aristocratic family. She came from a lot of money. And over the years, she went on 3 pilgrimages, which we'll look at today. Here's one image of her. This is in 1912, 2 years before World War I. And you'll notice a couple things. One, she has a bullhorn, and yeah, she's yelling forward march, even though you wouldn't know it, but she's known for that bullhorn, and she's known for treating her suffragettes like soldiers, because she walked all the way from Manhattan to Albany in 17 days. I'll repeat that. She walked all the way from Manhattan to Albany in 17 days, 175 miles walking, averaging approximately 14 miles a day. She referred to her supporters as her army, and they called her General Jones. There was a chain of command. Her friends were colonels and lieutenants. And every morning, just like this image you're seeing right here, she would give them the forward march and they would walk. She was very cognizant of time, and she was extremely smart. This march to Albany was December 12th. She started December 12th and arrived to Albany on December 29th. People thought it was a terrible idea because it was Christmas, and they thought it was in bad taste, and how could you do it at such a time? But it made headlines, and that's exactly what she expected, and she was right. Here she is again on the same march. Here she is in Hudson Valley. And it was sort of weird as she came north from Manhattan to Albany, because she would get a lot of swells. She would get a tremendous amount of supporters as she got into town. And as she left town, they would sort of leave. And she would go from town to town with supporters, and they would support her, and they would sort of dwindle away. I have a whole list of, she went to Yonkers, Peekskill, Fishkill, Wappinger Falls, Rhinebeck, Hudson Valley, all up New York. And there were tremendous amounts of obstacles for her. One, it went some of the most mundane obstacles to some really important obstacles. One, she would sometimes lose permits to go marching through towns, so she would have to wait until another permit was found. Or she lost her petition halfway up to a hotel that she wanted to deliver to the governor. In Ossining, New York, when they arrived in Ossining, New York, there was a prison break. And so it was frightening for her. And her last obstacle was when she got to Albany in December. And if anyone here has lived in Albany in December, you know it is not, it's a pretty cold place. Yes, there was a blizzard, which is no surprise, but they walked through a blizzard upon arrival in Albany. They all would complain of sore feet, but that did not stop them. There were even dances for fundraisers in Wappinger Falls. Halfway through, her family's doctor showed up to bring her home, and she told the doctor to go fly a kite. And I think she probably did not tell him to fly a kite, but we'll keep this friendly. I could tell you, upon arrival in Albany, this was her quoted words in the Albany Times. They feel touched that the people along the line in the march in a way that could have been effective by no other method. We feel that the people realize that this is no idle notion, that our pilgrimage has always stood for the highest ideals of the cause, and it represents who we are. From the receptions we have been accorded to the march, it was not in vain. And she was right. She was warmly accepted all the way up to the north. And even upon arrival in Albany. You would think after traveling all the way from Manhattan to Albany, that would be enough, but she continued to march. Her second march was 2 years later. She walked from New York to Washington. But this was not an organized event by her. This was NAWSA. This was a federal organization who she was supporting. The last event she organized, this one she was supporting a national group. This is her again. And you'll notice she's always out in front. Always. Every image, she is always out in front because she was the general. Here she is on her way to Washington. Once again, out in front in New Jersey. Here she is upon arrival in Washington. Votes for Women. New York to Washington. This march upon arrival in Washington was not warmly accepted like the Albany March. There were bands and floats and thousands of supporters, but it clashed with the inauguration of Woodrow Wilson, which was also done on purpose. And the march ended up with a lot of violence, and they were attacked. People threw bottles at them, and they were not able to finish, but they made their point. Rosalie Garner Jones, I don't know if, when you go and you vote, you typically do get a sticker, and I could tell you, Rosalie Garner Jones is on the sticker when it says I voted. She was put on there to commemorate the 19th Amendment that was passed in 1920, which I think is great. It's a great tribute to her with her bullhorn, which is fantastic. I can tell you as a teacher, I'm always looking to include unsung heroes. I'm always looking to get stories that people don't know about. And these are 3 great stories that everyone should know about. they all made a difference. They all made a change. They were all humanitarians. They all made long-lasting changes, which helped our society for the better. I could tell you, if you're looking to do more research or just learn about the Radium Girls, I do suggest you read The Radium Girls by Kate Moss. There was a fantastic book about all the girls. And March of the Suffragettes, a day-to-day view of her march all the way from Manhattan to Albany. And if you're interested, I do have a blog. It's Trials of a Middle School Teacher, and it's a collection of all unsung heroes. I'm on Edutopia, and that is my story. I'm going to stick to it.
That was a great presentation, Howard. I'm going to ask everybody to unmute. I don't know if